Hey, it's Dan. Welcome back to iAllegedly. And I've got a good one for you today because this is wild to think about this stat. 95% of all purchases on Black Friday were made via credit. 95%. Wow. Please like this video. Please subscribe to this channel. And today we have a sponsor, Patriot Gold Group. But wow. Let's get right into it. Of the 95% that was purchased on Black Friday, yes, it was a record year. More people shopped, blah, blah, blah. No, more people borrowed more money to get themselves deeper into debt. 84% of all the purchases made on Black Friday were done by credit card. Okay. 11% were done by buy now, pay later, the largest percentage ever. Now you can sit there and say, oh, Dan, that's no big deal. It's a huge deal because the other 5% were done via cash, green cash, and via a debit card. So that's that's how it was broken down. The worst part about this is that people think that they're saving money and they're, oh, everything's on sale, we're making a deal. No, you're borrowing at over 20 to 30% interest rate right now to do this. And it's nuts to go out and to sit there and think that this is somehow helping you. You know, it's basically, this psychological trap that everybody's in when it comes to shopping. Now, first time we've seen spending this bad with this high of a percentage on Black Friday. That's one thing. The other thing is that, you know, the retailers look great that did well, but the consumer is broke. I'm telling you, people don't shop because, they can afford it. They shop because they've got more credit right now. And it's a bad way to live. It's an awful way to live. And you're just seeing people caught in this trap right now when it comes to this. And God, I was floored when I saw these stats. And, the breakdown, like I said, you're going to see this hurt people in the long run. Almost 70% of the people that buy this. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, yeah, and people just pay off their credit cards at the end of the month. Almost 70% of those people do not pay off their credit cards at the end of the month, so they carry the debt. You have such a small percentage of people that pay it off in 30 days. So that's about 12% of the people that pay it off in 30 days. 95% of the purchases, 30 days they pay it off. 12% of those people do that. Gosh, that is just mind-numbing to think about. Now, people are also financing things like groceries, rent, utilities, past due bills. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Now, this goes hand in hand with the second part of this, and that is that the average person right now that's living paycheck to paycheck is spending their entire paycheck in 48 hours. Now, if you need it and you have to pay it, you have to. But the problem with it is that people don't do any planning. They don't sit down and say, gosh, maybe we shouldn't spend this money this quick. We should plan it out. And if you did that, you'd be in a much better spot that you wouldn't have to, be behind. So everybody on an average gets paid every 2 weeks. You get paid every 2 weeks, and then you spend it within 48 hours. Of course, rent, groceries, utilities, past due bills, the credit card minimums, the first 12 hours alone of people getting paid wipes out a third of the paycheck right now. God, that's just sad. I mean, it's just awful to think about right now. People aren't financially living, they're financially, triaging, which is a great way to put it. It's just a wounded person, and they're trying to fix this and make it so that they can get through this. I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't know how it's going to get better. We're starting to see more and more people go out of business at the wrong time. People are sick of hearing things like, oh, the cars are upside down, and this appliance store went out of business, and this restaurant chain is closing doors. You're going to see things happen that you've never predicted in your lifetime. It just happened, and it's going to be a very, very difficult 45 days. So between now and middle of January, you're going to see people go out of business. They're not going to have a good Christmas. You're going to see, I'm convinced a major retailer is going to go out of business during this time. So, you know, Black Friday, what a joke, you know? This is a collision of these two stories when you think about it, and they are, read them below. They're in the video description below. But you know, people don't have savings right now. People don't have any, margin for any error. If the car breaks down, they're screwed. They're done. If they need, it's funny. My son needed to go to the dentist, and I was like, "Oh, here we go." No, and he's, "Oh, I'm so glad I put that money away, Dad. Like you told me, 10% of paycheck. So I have this money set aside for things like this." And I didn't do it. I told you so. I just was like, "Oh, isn't that great? Fantastic. Everybody should do that." But the red flag of 2025 is the rising credit card balances for everybody. The buy now, pay later exploding. I'm telling you, do not do this. Don't do it. My brother and I were talking about, I mentioned Paul's TV in the last video, and one thing he did that was incredibly successful for his wallet was the no payment for a year. So people would go, "Oh yeah, I'm going to get the big screen TV. I don't have to worry about it." Well, the problem is the interest accumulates, and I had a stepbrother who bought a TV from Paul's for $3,000, and then when the interest came due, it was well over $4,000 a year later. Huh? I thought I didn't have to pay for this. Yeah, you didn't have to make a payment if you didn't want to, but the interest accumulates, and if you don't pay it off to zero, you have to pay the interest, and that's where people get stuck on this stuff. Oh God, paychecks evaporating instantly. This is just terrible. People can't refinance. They're going to lower interest rates this week, and everybody thinks this is going to be the thing that's going to make the economy turn around. People don't have jobs. People don't have any money left over at the end of the week. Now the consumer sentiment. Oh, it's down, it's up, it's down, it's up. Who cares, guys? I'm telling you, if you can't pay your bills and you have nothing left over, and it's gone within 48 hours of you getting paid, that is a dismal life. And you've got to fix this. This is no different than anybody who has a drug problem or anything else. They've got to accept the fact that they have a serious, serious financial problem. Let me know what you think so far. Share your thoughts. Let's talk about our sponsor, Patriot Gold Group. Gold's recent surge in price is not the end of the story. It's the opening chapter. You need to contact Patriot Gold Group today. 888-330-1431. They have been number one rated for 9 years in a row. They have done over $1 billion in business. They have over 10,000 clients, but you have to deal with a company that's done something right. And the advantage to Patriot Gold Group is they've got the absolute best service. Contact them today, but look at what China and Russia are doing. They're not into the dollar right now. They're buying gold, and they're buying gold at a record pace. They're telling us right now that China's purchases could be 10 times what is being reported. That is unbelievable right now. So make it your New Year's resolution to get yourself protected with precious metals in your retirement. Contact Patriot Gold Group today. 888-330-1431. Do it now before it's too late. I love doing these videos because I come across stories like this that none of us have heard about. And think about this. Marquee is a software company. They do CRM systems, customer databases for banks. They just had a ransomware attack, and there were 700 banks affected by this. They were hit in August. August, Dan, what are you talking about? How come they didn't tell us? Yeah, answer that one. None of us find out. I have to go to a computer trade magazine, Bleeping Computer, to get this story. But here's the thing. They're saying, "Oh, no, data wasn't stolen. It's all good. They just took our information." Well, it looks like one of the companies may have actually paid a ransom, one of the credit unions. So clearly they got information. Clearly they got things they shouldn't have. But no one wants information from your bank, transferred. And they also have 74 banks in one network that they think are really suspicious. and they're in Maine, Texas, and Iowa. So read the story below because it's too much. It's awful. It's awful. But did they pay a ransomware, fee? No. Who knows? They're not telling us. But think about it. August. Okay. 4 months later, you get to find out that your data's been hacked and at risk, which is too much. So there's been a recall of cheese in FDA in 31 states because there could be metal particles inside your grated cheese. And again, you have to go out to a food magazine to get this. It's not in the news. And read the story below on that because there's so many of these things that happen and we're just, does that affect me? Yeah, 31 states. Oh my gosh, I had to go in my fridge and check to see if any of that stuff was in there. So check the list of everybody in all the different places. You know, best states for healthcare in 2026. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but Hawaii is the best state, and people live longer in Hawaii. They live to 79 years. The worst state, which is almost 10 years earlier, 9.6 years earlier, is Mississippi. You don't want to live in Mississippi. Everybody else is in between. So California, I'm like middle of the road where I'm at. But check out that story. Let me know how that affects you and what you think about that. And again, when you hear things like that, does that make you sit there and say, "Oh gosh, that's concerning. I should take better care of myself." I just think you have the hillbilly factor of Mississippi. I think that's what that is. You got Alabama and certain states where people just aren't that healthy. So check it out. Dr. Marvin sent me a great story, and this is another warning. And thieves are using jammers to jam your cameras, your Ring cameras and your security cameras out in front of your house so they can rip your house off. Now, the advantage to this is when you have something like Rosie inside the house and you're not supposed to be there and I'm not with her, you have a problem. So they could jam away on all the security cameras and everything like that. But this is getting more and more sophisticated. And again, we keep hearing about this. You hear about banks getting ripped off. You hear about the crimes getting escalated bigger and bigger and bigger. And now you have thieves and you have groups of thieves that are using jamming equipment to jam people's security systems. That is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. You know, we've talked about this a lot. Every small business has been hit by, rising costs, rising employee costs, rising healthcare. I got to be honest with you. What would you do if you walked into an Italian restaurant and they handed you an electronic menu, and the menu, basically the price has changed every single day? Would that bother you? I think it would bother me immensely, to say the least. And I just think that you're going to see more fluid pricing. You're going to see, what is the answer? Is the answer a smaller menu for these places? Is the answer to have, better buying power, buying co-ops, things like that, where they can save money together? I don't know. I don't know. I just think that people, when they go out to dinner, don't have the extra money. Just talked about it. People that spend their paycheck in 48 hours, how much money do they have left over to go out and to buy anything? I just don't think they do. So, I'm going to expand on the loan thing that I talked about earlier, because this came up with a really disturbing thing. And I didn't want to talk about it in the beginning. I wanted to talk about it now. And that is that people, are actually borrowing money with a Christmas loan program. Let's go out and borrow money for Christmas. Let's go out and take out a loan, and it'll just be for Christmas gifts, and we'll pay it off. We can have an 18-month loan, 24-month loan. How many people have you bought a Christmas gift for, and 1 year later they're not in your life? Or your boss, people you work with, whatever, okay, relationships, whatever. Imagine taking out a loan to do that. Christmas loan programs. I just thought that was awful. Now, once again, the thing that nobody wants to hear, prioritize paying down expensive bills, you know, set up a weekly food and household budget. Nobody wants to do that. My kid did it. And if my kid can do it, and again, put money aside for emergencies with each paycheck. If it's $25, put it aside. put it aside, put it aside. I worked for a company a little over 10 years ago, and there was one woman in HR, and she's like, where do you want your paycheck sent to? Do you have just one account, or do you want it sent to multiple accounts? I'm like, multiple accounts? Who does that? She goes, well, I have mine sent to 4 accounts. And she explained a very elaborate program where household bills went into one, fund went into one, her savings account was one, and then she had one more, and honestly, I forgot what the fourth one was, but she had 4 separate accounts that she put the money into, and it just made it so that she constantly had savings, she constantly had an emergency fund, and she constantly had money set aside for the rainy days. And if a 24-year-old kid can do that, you guys should be able to do that too. So, you know, do no spending weekends. The people have done the no spend challenge. I could do that. I could do a no spend challenge, guys. I know I could. So let me know. A couple things, 2 things that just infuriated me, and one of them was I have the TSA, pre-screening. When I hop on a plane, I don't have to wait in the regular line because I'm not a degenerate and I'm not somebody that's a threat to people. So I can walk through the line faster. Well, they don't care. If you don't have the real ID, starting in 2026, it's going to cost you $45 to skip the TSA line on a flight. Is that criminal? Tom sent me this. That's just a ripoff. That is criminal to do this. Now, I don't fly very often, okay? Not like I have a buddy, Tom, who didn't send me the story. There's another Tom, a subscriber, that sent me this. But think about it. Tom flies every other week. Tom's going to have to pay $45 because he uses his passport and doesn't want to have the real ID. That's insane, guys. That's insane. So I hate stuff like that. So go get your Christmas loan, and I'll leave you with this one. Don't forget to check out newvideos.com. Don't forget we have a private channel called iAllegedly Live that's uncensored, and I love doing that content all the time. Check that out. You sign up at iAllegedly.tv for that. Final story is we're talking about savings. How much should the average New Yorker, and thank you, Dr. Marvin, for this one too, how much should the average New Yorker put aside to have their bills covered? $12,281. They should have that for 3 months if they have an emergency. That is just staggering. $12,000. I've never had $12,000 set aside in my life. Exactly. People are going to say things like that. So, the best Christmas gifts are the thoughtful Christmas gifts. Your presence is your present. Remember that. Be kind to each other. Love your family. Be nice. Celebrate what's important, guys. Okay? Please hit the like button. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you ever want to get a hold of me, it's hello@iallegedly.com is the email address. If you want to send a story or you want to see something, share it with us, and I will do what I can to make sure it gets out there. See you very soon.